We're out here asking gotcha questions in the middle of Pride in DC that we shouldn't be asking those questions.
We are in the middle of Pride.
You're trying to ask
My microphone.
You're trying to ask manipulative questions.
Is this a manipulative? Do you think this is a manipulative question? When should kids be allowed to transition? We're at DC Pride to go figure it out. What do you guys think is the appropriate age for kids to transition?
The beginning of adolescence.
Like 13 or
mid-teens, like high school or something.
14 is fine for like taking like hormones.
In terms of taking like medical substances, I would have a tough time prior to high school, so maybe that's like 15-ish.
13-ish would be a good number, just specifically because that's around like the time that a lot of kids are kind of figuring that stuff out for themselves.
By the time you turn 15 or so, then yes, as long as your parents are willing to do it.
do you guys have maybe an age range for when someone should be allowed to have a surgery?
18 or older, maybe.
I'd also say, I think 18.
Once they turn, 18.
The child should be 18, so that way they know what they're doing.
18 is kind of when you become an adult. And I feel like that's kind of the age that if that's what you want to do, you should be able to make that choice.
At 18, they would know who they are better than if they're younger than 18.
I would say 15, 16. Like, it's a good age when you kind of start to get to the point where you know yourself, you know your body.
I want to best understand how to support in non-medical ways first, and then learn how to support in more medical ways when I feel like they're approaching adulthood.
So you're saying before any kind of permanent surgery or hormone therapy is done at that age, then you can kind of figure out if we're going to go through the surgery, is that right?
Yes, supporting them can exist without medical therapy.
Gender expression involves a lot of things that aren't just surgery or hormonal treatment. You could dress in a way that's not like what your gender assignment typically dresses as, and I think that's appropriate from any age.
Social transition can start from anywhere from age 6. Social transition doesn't have any type of physical quandaries.
Do you think that kids should be allowed to transition?
Absolutely.
Even when they're like 2, 3 years old?
I don't think 2 or 3-year-olds understand what that is. 2 or 3-year-olds don't really understand what a ball is. So,
do you guys also have an age for maybe when hormone blockers would be permissible?
Any age, really. Those can be stopped at any time.
For hormone blockers, again, that's nothing that doesn't really have any negative effects.
Blockers, right? There's no real negative impact of them, right? Because it just delays stuff. It doesn't like permanently prevent anything.
Both of y'all said that hormone blockers don't have any negative impacts. I've heard otherwise.
With any medication, there's some side effects, right? Like with Tylenol, there's side effects, right? But like you still give Tylenol to kids. There's some potential side effects with any medication, but it shouldn't prevent if somebody really wants that, because that stuff is like life-saving. And so people should still have access to that.
Gender-affirming care for young people has to do with, puberty blockers and all those kinds of things, which are incredibly reversible. They don't necessarily mean, I'm going to chop your penis off. If you allow them to go through puberty, their voice is going to drop and all those kinds of things, and that allows them to not be cis-passing, which can be detrimental to their safety. Puberty blockers are completely reversible.
I'm not a doctor, obviously. I've heard that they're not reversible, that it does cause serious and permanent changes.
It is reversible. I've known multiple people to reverse. I'm going to say detransition, and I know they are happy with that.
What do you think about the people who say that they could make a mistake maybe, and there might be an age that's too early, and they might change their minds later? What's your opinion?
things can happen, sure. But I think that something like that's that personal to a person is something that no one else has the right to decide or step on or intrude on. If it is a mistake for some people, they can, either detransition or go through that in their life later on, but it's not up to anybody else to say, no, you just can't do this.
What's your response to people who think that, again, that you can make a mistake? Maybe you feel a certain way at a certain time, you get a little older and you realize, maybe that's not what I want for myself. Maybe I am a straight person or I'm not transgender. What do you think about that?
I think that those people are trying to influence a thought of their own. And I come from a Baptist background, so I can relate to that.
What kind of response do you have for that situation?
Everything's not going to be perfect, but if there's something that changes, if there's something that wasn't right, that I agree that's unfortunate. So maybe detransitioning situations have been not fully advised earlier on. Maybe we do need to make sure that there is a high level of certainty, a high level of confidence in the situation.
Most of the time, people do not detransition. It's a very small percentage amount of people. So it really depends. But I really think that the best thing to do is let them do what they want, because it is reversible due to the laws that are currently in place.
I think the rate for transitioning back is super, super low, and the benefits are just insanely good.
When it comes to detransitioning, at the end of the day, gender-affirming care saves lives. And if people decide that they want to detransition, that's up to them. Some people who are so young who do commit suicide due to being transgender and how they are treated in the world don't necessarily understand the repercussions of suicide and how permanent it is. And if gender affirming care, changes that, I say go for it.
They don't know the repercussions of suicide?
Yeah, so if there's been 6-year-olds and people who are younger who have committed suicide before because they don't necessarily understand the permanence of suicide, if that makes sense.
Do you think the parents have any role in when their kids should be allowed to transition?
The child is the one that has to live with themselves for day after day. The parent only has to say up until they're 18.
What about before they're 18?
As long as it's not destructive to them, it's fine. I have a son that's 5. If he were to social transition to like a girl at this point in time, I wouldn't mind him doing like anything social, but for medical, we'd have to have a very long talk about it.
Do you think the parents have any role in when their kids should be allowed to transition? Or do you think maybe parents can get in the way of what a child's identity is?
I think that parents can definitely hinder their children sometimes, like especially if they've already kind of proven that they're not supportive. Some people don't feel safe enough to trust their parents with that information, so I almost feel like it really depends on like what relationship you already have with your parents. If you don't have a good relationship with them, they kind of really shouldn't have an opinion. They shouldn't affect what you do in your life, honestly.
I would say that the parents have a much lesser role in it. I think that if you want to start talking about, surgical options where we already have to have parental consent, that might be one thing. But I think that as far as like hormonal treatments and recognizing them as the gender that they want and everything else like that, then no, the parents, I don't think really have anything to go on there. I understand surgical restrictions and parental consent for that. Anything below that level, no, I don't think it's up to them.
The right wants to say, we don't want kids to transition due to all the surgeries they're going to have. Well, that's not necessarily the truth. So when they say gender affirming care, they mean that we're going to protect you. We're going to do all these things to do what we can to make sure that you're safe. You can't let a minor get sex change surgery or any of those kinds of things.
Okay, and so lastly I would ask, when do y'all think it's appropriate for the physical sex changes such as surgeries? What do you think?
So let's be clear. Trans health is health. So if we're trying to ask gotcha questions or anything else, we shouldn't be asking those questions. If we're out here asking gotcha questions in the middle of Pride in DC, then we shouldn't be asking those questions.
We are in the middle of Pride.
My microphone.
You're trying to ask manipulative questions.
Is this a manipulative? Do you think this is a manipulative question? The question was, when do you believe that it's okay to do the physical change, the surgeries? Yeah, sure. So we want him to share his opinion and maybe change some people's minds. You know what I mean?
So you're just going for it.
No, I'm him. So the thing is, though, when it comes to the physical transition, that is a big decision, and I completely understand that. If they make the decision when they are, of legal age of 18, 19 years old and decide that they want to make that physical transition, that's a really big surgery. And if they decide they want to do that, I have no issues with that. That's what I believe, and I'll leave it at that.
I thought it was a very fair question. I didn't see any problem with it.
At the end of the day, we should be supporting those here. You shouldn't be standing here trying to tell us with gotcha questions and say this.
You keep saying a gotcha question, but how is this a gotcha question?
Sex change surgeries and individuals.
How is that a gotcha question? It's a very open.
Yeah, we shouldn't. Standing here on the corner of a street trying to say, asking misleading questions that aren't getting.
How is it misleading? I don't understand. It was a very open, transparent question. So he wants to interrupt an interview, say it's a gotcha question, say it's misleading, when it was a very simple question. Everyone else was very nice, very cordial, trying to voice their opinion, and this guy was the only person to come along and try to end that. His friends seemed to think it was fine, but he seemed to try to decide for them when they should speak to us and what they should be saying. So I didn't think that was appropriate at all. He took my microphone, and not in a respectful way like the people who were answering the question, and so that was that, yeah.